Hi cozy friends, and welcome back to Morgan Unraveled. My name is Morgan, and here on this channel I like to unravel my anxious mind one stitch at a time. This is such a long overdue podcast style update. I filmed my Everything I Knit in 2025 and did a cozy knitting vlog where I have shared some recent makes and some projects, but it's been a long time since I sat down and did a proper whole podcast and talked about finished objects, works in progress, and got to update you on everything I've been making. So I'm so glad to be able to sit down and chat with you about that today. Before we dive into what I've been making, let me know down in the comments what you are unraveling with while watching. We have just swapped our rooms all around, so I'm still getting my cozy corner set up. I'm really looking forward to getting some cute stuff behind me in the future, but for now, this is what we've got. If you saw those recent videos, you'll know that we have just moved back from Australia. So obviously there's a lot up in the air of just getting settled in, and we are putting together our room into like also being a combined nursery. So I'm gonna have a cozy chair here pretty soon to not only get to knit in, but to get to nurse my baby in and rock her, and I'm really excited for all of that. So let's talk about what I've been making recently, starting with what I am wearing. This is my most recent finished object. If you saw my snowstorm winter knitting vlog, I finished the jacket number 2 by My Favorite Things Knitwear, and I knit this in Cascade 220 in the color brown. Cascade 220 is a worsted weight wool, and it is a 100% Peruvian Highland wool. I knit this on size 5mm needles, which I think is what was recommended in pattern, and I did meet gauge. I really love this color on me, but as you'll see, as you saw in that knitting vlog, I wasn't super happy with the finished fit of this garment. And honestly, I feel like it's to no fault of my own because I have double and triple checked and I met gauge on this. I should have ended up with a finished bust circumference of about 53¼ inches, but my finished circumference was 46 inches, which is like significantly smaller. And that still gives me about 6½ inches of ease, but it's just a lot more fitted than I was going for. However, as time has gone on since I finished it a couple weeks ago, I have worn it. And when I'm not pregnant and I'm wearing my high-waisted jeans, I know it's gonna fit really cute on me. Again, it's just like not what I was expecting, because I even knit this cardigan with an extra cable repeat longer than the large suggests in pattern because I wanted it to have a bit more of that oversized long fit, and it's still very cropped. Also with the sleeves, they are very tapered and form-fitting, and I would understand all of this turning out this way if I was off gauge, but I don't understand how I followed to pattern for the recommended size for my body, and I was knitting on gauge, and it just was so far from the expected sizing. I have seen in the project notes for this cardigan that other people experienced this, so I do not think I'm alone in having this problem. I think a lot of people made modifications to not decrease as much on the sleeves, and I do wish I had done that. I do have leftover yarn from this. I had 700 grams and I only used 575. So had I realized that things were going to be so short, I definitely would have added more length on in all of the places. But if I were to fix the sleeves now, which I mean, they are long enough for me, especially when my arms aren't up. But if I were to fix the sleeves now, I would have to rip back and do less decreases to make them really perfect for me and longer. And then the body, I'm just not going to alter in any way because I would have to undo the button band, undo the hem on the bottom to add any length, and I still wouldn't be happy with not having as much oversizedness as I wanted. So it's not worth it to me unless I were to completely reknit it from the beginning. With this pattern, there was a few different yarn suggestions. One of them was an Aran weight yarn held on its own, and the other was, I think, a DK held with a mohair. And I noticed in the projects that my favorite versions from other people's projects were when they held it with a mohair, a DK with a mohair, and it allowed them to have more drape and flow with their garment. So if I were to knit this again one day, I would probably do that, and I would size up again, and I would do less decreases on the sleeves than recommended in pattern, and probably knit it just a little longer again. Even as an experienced cable knitter, I will say that my enjoyment of following this pattern was not what I thought it would be. There was no chart to follow, even though it's a very simple cable to remember and just follow intuitively unless you're doing decreases. I found that like when you're doing the increases, I was just having to read my knitting a lot because the line by line instructions were very confusing. So if you are a beginner cable knitter, I definitely don't recommend this pattern to start with. And in the pattern, when you are meant to be doing the double knit button band, it says to search on YouTube for a double knit button band tutorial. She does give written instructions of how to do it, but I wanted to suggest, I followed Handmade by Florence's video tutorial on YouTube for how to do the double knit button band. So if you are looking for a tutorial for that, I recommend hers. She's a very great teacher. And for the buttonholes, if you want to do buttonholes without cutting your yarn, I followed Woolbird's tutorial here on YouTube, and that was very helpful as well. I used a little coconut shell button, which I think looks really cute with this yarn. I know that there are so many people who love my favorite things knitwear pattern, so I'm not trying to harp on and on about it being negative. I would probably knit more from her in the future, but I would probably start with a more basic stockinette sweater and see how I like following her construction when it's not a cable knit. Her patterns are so beautiful, and a lot of them have very timeless and beautiful colorwork designs. I would love to knit the Ava jacket from her that has the newspaper design looking design on it. She has a few designs in the isager archives that I would love to work on in the future. I really do love the details of how the cables trail into one another and the cable that trails along the slope of the shoulder. So I feel like she gives a lot of attention to detail in her patterns, and I do appreciate that. I actually got this yarn from Makery in Canberra, a local yarn shop there that carries so many of the big name brands that I hadn't previously gotten to shop in person, which was really exciting. I originally purchased this yarn to make the Dagmar jacket, but I didn't feel like it was meeting the vision I was trying to create, so I did frog that, and it eventually became this, and I do think it works really well in this pattern, so I am happy with that choice. But I wonder how it would have turned out if I had held it with a mohair. My total cost for this project was 112 Australian dollars plus the pattern, which was 12.50 Australian dollars, so an all-in cost of $124.50 Australian, or $87.70 USD. So I would definitely work with this yarn again and not be mad at that price. I just wish that the sizing was a bit more better for my body, and I do think it will be when I am not pregnant. That is all I have to share as far as finished objects, so let's move on into works in progress. One of my most recent cast-ons that I am the most excited to share with you is the twist loop sweater by Other Loops. I am knitting this in Bendigo Woolen Mills yarn that I got from their back room. It said wool mixed fibers, and so I'm not sure what the blend is. I've tried to find it on their website and poked around on Ravelry. I really love the feeling of this yarn. It does feel like natural fibers. I don't think it has synthetic fibers in it, but if it does, it's probably a small percentage. There are flecks of almost tweed in it, so I suspect that the tweedy bits are the mixed fibers. And there are tones of yellow and orange mixed in, and it's a very cool toned green. I really love this color. It feels like the perfect like eucalyptus knit to cherish from Australian yarn. And I've wanted to knit this pattern for a very long time. It has been on my dream knits list, I feel like, and I always never cast it on because I was like, oh, that's gonna take so much mental energy. And you know, I love my cables, but I for a long time turned the other way when I had anything on my queue that had a lot of ribbing. But I have to tell you, I have enjoyed knitting this more than anything else recently. I don't know why, but when ribbing is more than 1 by 1, I love it. I get into such a flow. And I think this is like 3 by 2 ribbing. I don't know if I should say that about a paid pattern, but it also features this beautiful cable design down the front and down the shoulders. This is completely unblocked, but when it does block, it's going to open up and that cable will really bloom and be a lot more visible. I cast this on just on February 1st, and as of filming this, it is Valentine's Day. So in just a couple weeks, I have chugged away on this, and it's been a long time since I felt this excited about a project and also just enjoyed working on it so much. It's really special to spend time with Bendigo woolen mills on my needles now that it is no longer accessible to me, and this is a color I love so very much and I think will look so good on me. So it's just really nice to get to have this kind of yarn available to me and get to work with it. I think that working on this project has really helped me reframe my mindset about my yarn stash, because during the move we were wrapping it all up in vacuum sealed bags to put in a suitcase, and I was trying to bring home as much as I could, but having to sacrifice some along the way. And when we got here and I'm unboxing it and putting it into crates, I felt a bit overwhelmed by how much yarn I had to work through, and I felt like I was in a season of life where I'm about to have another baby and like, am I gonna have time to work through all of this stuff? And I felt this overwhelm with my yarn, but working on this has really allowed me to reframe it and feel like, no, like I'm so thankful to have access to the yarn I do have access to in my stash, and that is a privilege. And we're also in a time where it's a luxury to get to have access to materials to do your craft. And whether you are intentionally shopping or shopping when you are able to shop sales or whatever it is, as long as you are bringing things into your stash that are going to bring you joy when you work on them and aren't breaking the bank for you, I think that there's value in that. I do this year want to work on making sure I'm using as much as I am bringing in. So I started an Excel spreadsheet to track the yarn I'm buying and the yarn I'm using. I haven't created an entire board of all of the yarn in my stash because I do feel like that would overwhelm me. I do have plans for a lot of the things I have, but I also don't feel the need to have a project planned for every single thing I have in my stash anymore. Mostly because sometimes it's exciting when Ozetta releases a new pattern and I'm like, I want to cast that on, but I don't know what I could use, and then I can go through my stash and figure that out. So I do think it would be valuable to have all of my yarns tracked in a way that I can inventory and see what I have to use, but I don't want it to be in a way that makes me feel like I have to work through it faster. I decided to cast on the size large, but most of the stitch counts for the neck cast on are the same for like 4 of the smallest sizes and a few of the biggest sizes. So I went with the size large cast on, but I did not do the collar yet because I am thinking of doing a mock neck, but I wasn't too committed yet. I didn't know if I wanted to do the boat neck double folded collar. I do like that design and I do love a wide neck on myself, but I also really like a mock neck. So I'm going to knit this up and probably even do a block before I put a collar on so that I can really make an informed decision about what kind of collar I want on it. And then another thing as far as sizing. This sweater has a very deep yoke from all of the patterns, from all the project notes I read on Ravelry, and also from seeing some people share their finished twist loop sweaters. So I decided as I was working on my yoke for the very last increases to do them on every row instead of every other row, because these increases are done in sections of 10 rows. So when I was about to do the last section, I was like, man, I really don't want it to get an inch and a half deeper. I would like it to kind of end close to where I'm at for the yoke. So I wanted to make sure I increased the same amount of stitches because I do want the circumference of the size large. So I did those increases a bit faster and I think it looks quite good. I don't think it's too noticeable. The sleeves and the underarm cast on, as well as the body, are all the stitch counts for the size large. That was just a very small modification I made in the yoke to wrap it up a bit early. I know some people completely omitted a section or so of the repeats, and I just did not want to lose any circumference on the body because I do want an oversized fit. I am knitting this on a size 4.5mm needle, and this is a 8-ply DK weight yarn. I'm not sure if I said that already, but I noticed a lot of people in the project notes also just held a single strand of DK, and I really liked the stitch definition of their versions of this sweater, so I thought that it would work out, and I am loving mine so far, and I can't wait to see how it blooms after the block. Oh, the other modification I made was I did 4 less rows in between the cable crossing repeat, just because I noticed a lot of people struggling with the lengths. Modifying the length was difficult because you want to make sure you get that 3rd repeat, but if you do, then sometimes your project ends up a little longer than you'd like it to be. From what I was reading, when I start projects, I get kind of obsessive and like doom scroll on the Ravelry project notes, just trying to plan and make sure I'm going to do everything in a way that actually will turn out in a finished object I will be happy with. Maybe that's not doom scrolling. I think it's just inspiration, but I have been dealing with a lot of pregnancy insomnia, so when I can't sleep at night, sometimes I'm just planning my projects and spending a whole lot of time scrolling on Ravelry. I am so very excited about this project and I cannot wait to get to wear it. I think it's going to be a very fun winter to spring transitional piece because of the color, but also an amazing fall knitwear. I'm really cherishing the time with this spent on my needles just because, like I said, I have limited access to Bendigo woolen mills. With the tariff situation going on right now, they are not shipping to the US, so who knows when I'd be able to get more, but I do have a decent amount in my stash to be able to work with, and I just want to enjoy that while it lasts. Speaking of Bendigo woolen mills, my next project is also a knit with their yarn. I shared in my video of my 2025 makes that when I was talking about my Dagmar zipper sweater that I had purchased yarn from Bendigo woolen mills for my son to have a Dagmar junior sweater. I showed him the rustic tweed yarns and I really thought he was going to go for red because he's been asking me for a red sweater for a long time. But when I was reading him out the colorways and showing him, he picked out this color Thunder. It has flecks of orange and gray throughout, and it is a dark colored gray. I am pretty sure he picked this because one of his favorite songs is Thunderstruck by AC/DC, and I think that is the most Aussie little boy thing in the world, but it is such a beautiful color. I wasn't expecting to be so obsessed with the way this worked into the cables. When I first swatched for this, I was actually a little stressed out about how dark the yarn was. Like, are the cables even going to be that visible? But they are. It looks so beautiful. I am knitting the size 6 to 7 for him, but I am following the lengths for the size, I think 5. And it's really special to get to tailor my son's knits to his body like that. After filming that video, I did want to cast this on because I was talking about how I'm knitting all these things for baby and that I had yarn and stash to make this beautiful sweater for him. And I wanted to go ahead and make a special little match for him and I, while I'm also knitting all these things for his baby sister that he is so excited about. He wasn't asking me to make him something else, but I just thought he would really appreciate having something for him on the needles as well. And he has really enjoyed following the process of me making it. When I finished the body of this last week, I tried it on him and he didn't take it off for a while. He played in it even without a collar on. And then we were talking about how cute it looked as just a vest. So at first I was like, okay, let me just put the collar on and we'll see if we want to keep it as a vest. If we were to keep it as a vest, I was going to pick up the sleeve stitches and just add a few rows of ribbing, similar to how the collar looks, which is a double folded collar. So I went ahead and actually marked this project as finished because mentally I was like, okay, I don't really have that much more to do on it. We just have a decision to make on it. But I thought he would wear it a few times while we decided that, because he was like wearing it while playing, even though it was like ends not even woven in. But this week he actually said he did want the sleeves on, so that was the decision made. And I am working on the first sleeve. I'm on 9 out of 10 decreases for this sleeve, so almost done with sleeve 1. And then I will work on the second sleeve and we will have matching dagmars. I'm so excited about it. The double folded collar, I do think I did the bind off a little too tight. I wish I had sized up a needle for doing the bind off because we have to really squeeze it over his head. And I did do the stitch count for size 6 to 7 and he's almost 4. So I can't believe that it's that tight going over his head, but it does mean that it sits comfortably when it is on him. It just means that it's like tough to get on and off. I can't say enough how beautiful this yarn is and the way it complements the cables so well. This stitch definition is absolutely amazing. I am not sure if I said it, but this is an 8-ply or DK weight yarn, which is what the pattern calls for. And it has been a lot of fun to work on. I think that the dagmar is one of those that is so easy to remember, especially because I've knit an entire adult version, so I haven't had to like reference the charts a whole lot for his. It's quite mindful because I have to pay attention to where I'm at in the pattern. It's mindless enough that I can pick it up without having to pull out the charts, but it's mindful enough that I can focus my brain and not have to have my wandering thoughts while I'm having my knitting time. I have found that to be very valuable lately for my knitting, to require attention but still be able to get to a point where I can work on it mindlessly and also mindfully. It's almost like this meditative practice for me, and it's been very good. And that's especially valuable right now because, like I said, it's been a while since I've felt that way about my projects. The last half year was so much for us, and I know my knitting brings me a lot of joy and comfort, but during the chaos of the move, I really just didn't feel able to lean into my making practice. So it feels so good to be so inspired and enjoying my projects so much again. Something I love about this as someone who has knit the adult version is that the shoulder seam diamond actually lines up on this version, whereas on the adult one it does not. And it's because the child sweater is not knit in short rows quite the same way the adults is, where on the adult you cast on for this middle cable repeat and then you do short rows until you have all of the stitches across the back on the needles, whereas for this one, you cast on all the stitches across at the same time. Something I noticed about the charts though was that row 28 for the chart, the final row, was missing in order to make it a repeatable chart pattern. So if you knit this version of the sweater, you're going to have to kind of use your intuition for that row based off of the same section that would be below, and then start from row 1 again. Another thing that made me really want to put the sleeves on was that because I have enough yarn, so it felt like, okay, what am I going to do with the rest of this if we just leave it as a vest? So I am glad that this will end up, and I could have made it into like a hat for him or something to match, but I am glad that I'm adding the sleeves and that he made that elective decision. Next, let's talk about the Sunday sweater by petiteknit. I cast this one on during my snowstorm vlog, and it is just the perfect snowy winter knit and really got me through that snowpocalypse. Really, it was like a week and a half where we really didn't leave the house, and then we were able to actually go to the grocery store. The roads here where I live, which is in the south, there's no infrastructure for salting the roads. We were just not prepared for that kind of weather. So there was no access to being able to leave your house like there is in the north when there is a snowstorm. But I am knitting this in isager soft in the color E0, which is a blend of alpaca fibers and blown cotton, and it is the softest, most luxurious yarn. It is the most expensive yarn I've ever knit with. I purchased it back when I had a test knit for Sari Nordlund's Belle and Sebastian pullover, and I will put some clips in of that project, but it did not work well with this yarn. The cables, this yarn is not meant to be used for cables, so keep that in mind if you are ever looking for a project for this yarn, but it is very lovely. Another thing about the isager yarn though is that as I am having to frog it from the Belle and Sebastian because it gave me so much hand pain, I could not stand to finish it. I did complete the test knit. I needed to do the yoke, the collar, and one sleeve. So I completed that, but then I was out of commission for 3 weeks. I wasn't able to knit after that because I hurt my wrists so badly trying to cable with yarn that just doesn't have any stretch. And the yarn has almost a Velcro-like texture that sticks to itself as you knit with it. So that makes it really impossible to knit cables on. So I had put that project away once I finished the test knit, and I didn't look at it for a long time, but it was always in the back of my mind. Like, I need to do something special with that yarn because it's such a luxurious yarn, and I did want a beautiful white sweater in that yarn. So it was always like bothering me that I didn't finish that knit. And like I was saying about the twist loop, I have come to realize that like these yarns we have in our stash are a value to us. They aren't this like liability, like, oh, you have to use that and you need to use it quickly in order to like be valid for having it in your home. So I have given myself some grace with that recently, but before, when I was casting this on, it was with this idea of like, I need to use this yarn. Why is it just sitting around in my house? So I'm very thankful to be working this into something new and beautiful. I am holding it with Drops Kid Silk Mohair in the color Marzipan, and this pattern is meant to be knit with a bulky weight yarn. I think it's the Coast yarn by Santa's Garn and a mohair. So I thought I was going to have to knit off gauge, but I actually was able to still meet gauge on the I sized down on needles. So it's meant to be knit on 7mm. I'm knitting it on 6.5mm, but I am meeting gauge. And I do think that the fabric might be a bit more open than intended, but I really like it. And I think it's going to make a nice blousey sweater. I am knitting the size large, which is the recommended size for my bust circumference. And I did add short row shaping into the back. As you can see that the back neck has risen up a little bit. I followed the project notes from the user Pony Puppet Show on Ravelry, and it really helped to shape the back so that the collar won't ride up on my neck. I'm glad I added that. The pattern says it was updated, and I downloaded the update. It said it was updated to have more sizing and short row shaping, but I could not find anywhere in the pattern where there were instructions for short row shaping. So that is why I searched the pattern project notes to find some. But other than that, I am knitting it completely to pattern, and the Sunday sweater is a circular yoke design. So you are regularly doing increases throughout the entire yoke. You cast on for the collar and then fold that over and work the yoke. And as you increase, the ribbon gets wider and creates this like sun ray effect. I have knit a few Sunday sweaters now. I knit one for my son. I knit the Sunday suit for my daughter who is on the way. And now I will have a Sunday sweater myself, and I'm so very excited about it that we'll have a cute little family match. I definitely will be circling back to this project. It's a great mindless one to have on the needles, especially if I'm doing something where I can't like look at my knitting a whole lot. But I've just been so excited to work on my twist loop sweater that I haven't pulled this one out as much. I think another element is that working with the isager soft is not the most pleasant experience. Although it creates the most cloud-like fabric, like I said, it kind of pulls and velcros to itself as you're working into the stitches. So I do think it's something that I like to work on in bursts. And when I pull it back out, I enjoy it a lot more than if I'm trying to chug away at it. The last finished object I have to share with you is a really exciting and new one for me. I am working on the Pressed Flowers shawl by Christoffers. I am not someone who usually does a whole lot of knitting that is not for garments. I feel like garments are the most rewarding makes, and I don't tend to have much interest in making accessories. And usually when I make an accessory, it's more of a product knit than a process knit. But when I saw this pattern, I was watching Jinier knit. I'm not sure if I'm saying her name right, but I was watching her project vlog where she, I think, did a road trip in the US. She is from China, and I really loved watching her knit this. I've been quite obsessed with her project vlogs lately. They are so aesthetically pleasing and calming. She doesn't talk in them. It's just calming music and beautiful b-roll, and she's often making herself a nice coffee and working on her projects, and it's very inspiring. But when I saw her knitting this, I decided to poke around in my yarn stash, and I had just the day before stumbled upon some yarn in an antique shop. Like, it was like a record shop here in my local area. We went to a chocolate tour that was the weekend before Valentine's Day, and it basically was a way to promote all these local businesses in this town square. It's actually the town square that my husband and I's wedding was in. We eloped in the November of 2016, but we had a wedding ceremony in May of 2017. So getting to go back to our place where we got married and stand in the place where we took our wedding photos was so special, especially doing that while holding my son and having our next child growing in my belly. It was just such a special thing to get to do. But they were doing this chocolate tour, so you go into all of these shops, you get your stamp on your little chocolate passport, and they give you some chocolate to try and sample. And then you can shop around their shop. Maybe it's a soap business, and then there was bookshops and record shops, barbecue shops, the whole nine. And we went into a record shop. My husband was looking at some records, and I found some yarn. I was not expecting to see any yarn on this tour because there weren't any yarn shops. There were some hand-dyed sock yarns. As you can see, these were literally being sold for $5. I felt like I was stealing from them because, did I hold that upside down? Probably. As you can see, These were being sold for $5. This is such a beautiful yarn, and I feel like honestly, you don't even get good yarn for $5 at Michael's and rest in peace Joann's. Like, you can't just, unless it's acrylic yarn. So these being merino sock yarns that are hand dyed being sold for only $5, like, I literally felt like I was robbing them. But I had to grab all of it. So I did. I got 2 skeins of this great yarn dyed in Great Britain, stranded dyeworks merino singles, and I got 2 skeins of that. And at first I thought I would make a tee, because it also came with this lace weight mohair, or not came with, I paid a separate $5 for this, but I mean, what a steal this is. But I only had half the amount of the mohair than this, so I realized I would need to do something else with these, but I definitely wanted to hold these 2 together for something. And so when that shawl pattern popped up, I was like, I would love to use this somehow with something in my stash to make this shawl. The shawl calls for a DK weight yarn, but some people do use a fingering weight. I found this fingering weight yarn in my stash. It is Knitpicks Twill sock yarn, fingering weight, in the color Serpent Heather. They had actually sent me this yarn to try out. I am a Knitpicks affiliate, so if you're ever wanting to shop Knitpicks yarn, my link is always in the description, and I make a small commission off of those sales at no extra cost to you. And I have wanted to work with this color for so long because it is so beautiful, and I've really been craving more color on my needles, especially while working on my twist loop sweater, because it's just so fun to get to mix it up. I'm often working with neutrals, so I've just been really wanting to knit with more color. I tried at first starting the project with 1 strand of this fingering held with this light fingering and this lace weight mohair, but then I found that this was a bit thinner than this, so I started over, and I'm holding 2 strands of this, and these are both making about a DK in this pattern now, and it works up a lot more evenly. I also sized up my needle from the recommendation, and I just really like how the sagey green blue yarn pokes through the yellow. The pressed flowers shawl is mosaic colorwork knitting, which I've never done before, and it is so fun. It took me that first cast on to really like figure it out, but once I restarted, I was able to really understand how it works up, and it made it so much more fun. So I'm able to actually at this point work on this without referencing the pattern, which is so fun. I love when you get to a point of a project that is charted, but you don't have to like look at the charts as much. And I'm also just so obsessed with this color combination. It's a mustard yellow with this sagey green, and if you scroll through the projects on Ravelry or on Instagram of this pressed flower shawl, there is just endless inspiration for color combinations that are so fun. I feel like I could make a few of these, and like I said, am not someone who thought I would have much interest in making shawls. I am ordering a second ball of this since I'm holding it double, but I will not be making the border of this shawl. I'm probably going to knit it to the length before that border and then do an I-cord bind off, because I don't love the way the border has like the flowers closer together. I've seen that some people do an inverted color border, so I might consider doing that, but I am just really enjoying this project, and I can't wait to get to wear it. Like, say if I have just this plain shirt on in the spring with no cardigan, I think this would look so cute as just a little accessory. And in the fall, this will be so nice to wear with my jean jacket. I'm really excited to have something like this as an accessory to my wardrobe. I think that this gives a fun way to show off some sock yarns that, you know, you don't get to show other people the colors that you have when you're wearing your socks, because you tend to have them in your shoes. So it's nice to be able to work some sock yarns into a project that will be very visible and really fun colors. Sometimes I feel like color is a bit too bold to put in an entire garment, and I do want to reframe that thought because that's not the case. I think that our knits are often statement pieces in our wardrobe, so let them be a statement. They don't have to be neutrals that match with everything. But having a statement accessory is something I never knew I needed, and I'm so excited to soon have. The other yarns I got in that $5 bin was this Juniper Moon Farms Finley DK in the color 202. It is this like very multicolored mulberry silk and merino wool blend. Don't know what I'm going to use this for, but it was a consideration for this shawl because I also have some Sorella DK cashmere yarn, and so I really was thinking about casting that shawl on in this, but it would have ended up being a lot smaller because there's just no way I could get any more of this, and the shawl does call for I think 2 skeins of DK weight, so it would have just ended up being a very like bandana style, which I still might do. I think it would be cute to have as she does have a kerchief of the pattern and you can wear that in your hair. I think that would be so cute. So that is still a consideration for this yarn. This was not one of the $5 ones. This is from Sorella, the hand dyer, and she did the Eras collection. This is the color Ivy, and I wound it up ages ago. I just haven't found the perfect pattern for it yet. I was thinking about doing a poet scarf with it, so that's the other consideration for this one. And then the last $5 yarn I was able to snag is this beautiful pink variegated Sundara Farm Italian merino cashmere and nylon yarn. It is such a beautiful color. It's not a very me color. So I don't know what I'll do with this, but I could make something for baby or use this held with another yarn in like a different shawl. I think it's closer to a sport weight than a fingering, especially if it is the accent color in a color work design like a shawl like this. So I'm really excited about these yarns, and at $5 a pop, I mean, you have to grab them. Like, it doesn't matter what you're going to use them for, just get them. But I do feel like this yarn and project are really helping me to manifest spring is on its way. As I've shared, we are in our second round of winter because we moved from Australia, going into spring there, but fall here. So we just had to do 2 rounds of winter, and I am just so ready for it to warm up and to get to, I'm gonna meet my baby this spring. So there's just so many great things around the corner, and I'm really happy to be near family and that we'll get to go explore the zoo and things like that once things get a little nicer outside. All of my other recent finished objects and things on my needles are baby knits, and I know I've mentioned this a few times, but that is the very next video you can expect from me. I'm going to have a whole video talking through all the things I am making for baby, what I've made already. That will be a really fun video to film because I feel like I am fully in nesting mode now. I am going to be 8 months pregnant next week. We are getting into the single digits of weeks to go until we meet baby, and I'm so very excited. But I think that is all I have to share for this video. So I want to thank you so very much for spending your time with me. Please let me know down below what you are working on while watching, and don't forget to do all of the things that help you unravel. Stay cozy, and I will see you again very soon. Bye, friends.